January 2nd, and of course we're doing the hashtag 3 Rivers Challenge. We're eating out of our pantry for the month of January and February. I am in here making sausage out of the freezer. So we've got our sausage patties cooking. The house is full today. I've got all but one grandchild. Yeah, I'll make you waffles. Sure, Maddie. We have all but one grandchild. He's coming in a little bit. He's going to hang out and play with the rest of the kids. Donald fixed this element for me. He fixed this element on the stove, and since he did that, this thing is really cranked up. Maddie likes waffles out of the toaster. She likes the Eggo waffles, or she'll eat homemade waffles. But we have some Eggos in our freezer, so I'm making them for her this morning. I'm going to make the kiddos some eggs. So there'll be eggs, sausage, and maybe toast if they want bread, or maybe pancakes. And then Maddie wants waffles, and so we got them cooking. No. You want waffles? You want sausage? Okay, waffles. Good job.
Oh, it's wet. Oh. Everybody! That's not Duck Duck Goose.
Why are you chasing me?
That's Paw Patrol.
It's around him. No! No!
It's going to get really cold in the next 2 weeks, but it's beautiful out here today, ain't it? Well, it's getting close to supper time, and so I'm in here in the kitchen. You know, this is the 3 Rivers Challenge, and it's a pantry challenge where you eat all your pantry for the months of January and February. So I made breakfast this morning, sausage and eggs for the kiddos. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and I'm going to make the oyster stew for supper that I didn't get to make around Christmas, because, you know, I didn't cook around Christmas, and I need to go ahead and cook these oysters up. So I'm going to go ahead and get this oyster stew made. And I'm just going to show you the way we made it growing up. I had a little snacker come in, had to get a little snack. But what I did here, I've got my soup pot. You know, this is the same pot I cooked my black-eyed peas in. Putting in a little bit of coconut oil. You can use whatever kind of fat you like to. I'm going to brown onions and celery in this. I've got my little pan heating up. I don't want it to get too hot. This new burner that Donald fixed for me, it really gets hot. So I've got to get accustomed to that. Now I've got 2 partial pieces of onions that I've had in the fridge. I'm going to go ahead and use these up first. And I've got some celery over here that I'm washing in the sink. And I'm also going to chop that up. Now I've got my food processor out because we love onions and celery in our oyster soup, but we ground it up so fine that you can't even see it. You can't tell that it's in there except by the flavor. Now I just threw those 2 pieces of onions you saw. Maybe in total it was a whole onion and a quarter if you added it together. And I've got, about 6 stalks of celery with the green cut off and the end cut off. And I'm just going to chop them as fine as I can in this food processor. Now you can add butter in here with, this is coconut oil, but whatever kind of, fat that you use to cook your vegetables in. Here, the celery and the onion. Now I chopped this up super fine. You can see much, much smaller than a regular chop that you would do with your knife, because I want it to disappear into the soup, and I'm adding it for the flavor. It's really good. The onion is just a yellow onion, and then the celery is mild flavors, and it adds to the soup, but you don't want it to cover up the flavor of your oysters. Now we've got it in here. It looks like quite a bit, but this is going to be a big pot of soup. Now I'm going to let this cook. I'm going to probably let it cook about 10 minutes. You can set the timer if you want to. Sometimes it just helps you give you an estimate of what 10 minutes is, because you know you can get busy. One of the kids can call you or something can happen, and then you won't realize how long you've had it in the pan. Experience will tell you a little bit, but it's always just good to go ahead and give yourself a time guideline. Now this looks like quite a bit. It will cook down. I cook this till the onions are kind of translucent. It's hard for me to cook this oyster stew and not think of my dad. He loved it. Now these are the oysters that I got. I think I got them there at Walmart. I sure did. This is a pretty good sized oyster container. And I was remembering that we always made oyster stew in the month that ended with an R. So December, of course, ended with an R. And we would have oyster stew often. I think it's because that's when they harvested the oysters, was in the months that ended with R's. And any of the other months that didn't end with R, you didn't get oysters. I think now that's changed. I guess with the farming of oysters, you can get all kinds of oysters now. I don't think you even have to worry about when they come in anymore. But I'm going to just put this container of oysters in here, and I'm going to pick through it. These oysters are huge. Now this is something that I liked about these oysters. I'll just share them with you. I like that they were farm raised, a product of USA. I like that they are high in natural zinc. And I like that they give you some consumer information right here. And it tells you right here, shell particles may be encountered in this product. Rinse and examine with care before using. I have encountered shell in my product. So these are like beans. We are going to look, dried beans. We are going to look this product, and we're going to make sure there's no shell in here. Okay, the kiddos are doing good, taking a little break, still letting this cook till clear a little bit. And then I'll pick through these oysters. Now I'll stick my hands right in here and mush through and see if I feel anything. Look how big these oysters are. My goodness, these things are huge. I will definitely have to cut these up because I have never saw any that big. But I'll go around to all these little folds and all these little areas where a shell could hide, and that's where I'll look for shells. And then I am going to cut these up a little bit. The juice that they come in is still in there. The oysters that I get are usually little gray oysters. These are huge white oysters, farmed in the United States. So I'm looking forward to see how these are going to taste in the in our oyster stew. Well, I cut these up, and I've reserved the liquid. They're in here. You can see that the celery and the onions have cooked pretty good. I'm just going to add the oysters and the liquid. The American farmed oysters, I'm going to add them right on in here with this onions and these celery. I'm going to let these cook just a little bit in that liquid. Let all these flavors absorb together. Add a little salt and pepper. That's about a teaspoon of salt. And about a teaspoon of black ground pepper. And there's one other thing I love to add. Instead of red pepper, we used to just use red pepper growing up, but I like to add Old Bay seasoning. So I'm going to put about a teaspoon of that in here. I don't know, I love the smell of this Old Bay seasoning. Oh my goodness, it just smells so good. I forgot where I use it in a lot of soups and stews, and even the traditional oyster stew. Now these are going to cook just for a minute or two, maybe 3 minutes, and then we'll add the milk. I got this down on a low simmer. The oysters will curl a little bit. Well, now we got a pretty good base going right here. We've got our oysters in here and the little juice that it came in. We've got our celery and our onions, and then we've got our spices, our Old Bay, our salt and pepper. And now I've got the gallon of milk open. You can see this is a slow simmer. We're going to add the milk, which will stop this from simmering because this milk is cool. You don't want to boil the milk. You just want to softly simmer it. This is a good sized pot. And that was a big container of oysters. So I'm going to use most of the milk. We're going to let this simmer together just a little bit. We're not going to bring this milk to a rolling boil of any kind. It'll put a skim or a scum on top of it if we do that. We're just going to simmer it. Let everything go together. And that's how we make oyster stew. Donald will be happy when he gets home and I've got this made. It's one of his favorite soups. He absolutely loves oysters. There's plenty of them in here. They'll come up when you make a bowl of soup. And you put the dipper in to get them out. Be very, very good. Thank you for letting me share with you what we're going to have for supper tonight. I'm going to just have crackers with it. We do have a little bit of cornbread left over from our prosperity meal. We actually have quite a few leftovers from that. Donald won't care whether he has cornbread or these oyster crackers. He'll be just fine with either one. So I'm not worrying about that a whole lot. We're just going to go ahead and enjoy the oyster stew. That'll be our whole supper tonight. I love soup. I could eat a different soup every night of the week and I'd be alright. Donald loves soup. He particularly loves oyster stew, but there's times when he's like, I need something solid. Can we just have a meal? A solid meal? No soup tonight? I'm like, sure. Thank you for joining me today. And like always, until next time. Okay, so what do you think about the
oyster stew?
Yeah, oyster stew.
I love oyster stew.
I know. I told everybody.
With oyster crackers.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit.
You would eat it with cornbread or any kind of cracker.
Cornbread, white crackers.
Yeah.
Any kind of cracker.
Right, right.
Good and warm.
All right, you got to tell us how it tastes with those big old farm-raised oysters.
Oh, there's one. Good. Real good.
I'm glad.
I love oysters too. I've always liked oysters, you know.
Oh, well, you know what that means. You got to kiss the cook.
Well, thank you.